and I commend this statement to the House.
This video contains Jeremy Corbyn's reaction to Theresa May's statement on Brexit. If you haven't seen the video already, we made a video which analyses Theresa May's statement. Knowing what she said is really important to understand what Corbyn's about to say. So if you've not seen that video, I recommend you pause this one and check that one out first.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to start by thanking the Prime Minister for an advance copy of her statement. I've lost count of the number of times the Prime Minister has come to this House to explain a further delay. They say, Mr. Speaker, history repeats itself, first time as tragedy, second time as farce. By the umpteenth time, it can only be described as grotesquely reckless. This is not dithering, it's a deliberate strategy to run down the clock. The Prime Minister is promising to achieve something she knows is not achievable and is stringing people along. So will she be straight with people? The withdrawal agreement is not being reopened. There is no attempt to get a unilateral exit on the backstop or a time limit. In Sharm el-Sheikh, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "A delay in this process doesn't deliver a decision in Parliament, it doesn't deliver a deal." I can only assume she was being self-critical. She so far promised a vote on her deal in December, January, February and now March, and only managed to put a vote once, in January, when it was comprehensively defeated. The Prime Minister continues to say that it's her deal or no deal. But this House has decisively rejected her deal and has clearly rejected no deal. It is the Prime Minister's obstinacy that is blocking a resolution. So if the House confirms that opposition, then what is the Prime Minister's plan B? And I pay tribute to others across the House who are working on such solutions, whether that's what is commonly known as Norway Plus, or other options. Labour, I would like to inform the House, will back the Costa Amendment if tabled tomorrow, and also confirm that we'll back the amendment drafted by the Honourable Member for South Leicestershire on securing citizens' rights for EU citizens here and for UK citizens in Europe, some of whom I met in Spain last week. The Prime Minister has become quite the expert at kicking the can down the road. But the problem is the road is running out, and the consequences of running down the clock are evident and very real for industry and for people's jobs. For now, the Prime Minister states the can can be kicked until the 12th of March, but the EU cannot ratify any deal now until its Leaders' Summit on the 21st of March. After all, Section 13 of the EU Withdrawal Act states that the final agreement is laid before this House before it can be voted on. So can the Prime Minister confirm how can there be a vote in this House if the EU has not yet agreed any final exit? Or is the Prime Minister now saying that there will be no change to either the withdrawal agreement or to the political declaration, and so will we be voting again on the same documents? Every delay, every bit of badly made fudge just intensifies the uncertainty for industry, business investments being held back, jobs being lost, and yet more jobs being put at risk. The real-life consequences of the Prime Minister's cynical tactics are being felt across the country. Factories relocating abroad, jobs being lost, investment being cancelled, thousands of workers at sites across Britain's towns and cities are hearing rumours and fearing for the worst. The responsibility for this lies exclusively with the Prime Minister and her government's shambolic handling of Brexit. Even now, Mr. Speaker, with just 1 month to go before our legally enshrined exit date, the Prime Minister is not clear what she wants in renegotiations that have now dragged on since it became clear in December that her deal was not even backed by much of her own party, let alone Parliament or the country at large. Labour, Mr. Speaker, has a credible plan that could... Labour, Mr. Speaker, Labour has a credible plan that could bring the country together, provide certainty for people and safeguard jobs and industry. It is based around a new customs union with the EU to protect our manufacturing industry, a close alignment with the single market protecting all of our trading sectors, and keeping pace with the best practice on workers' rights, environmental protections and consumer safeguards. The people of this country deserve nothing less. The Prime Minister talks about giving commitments on future developments, but that is way short of a commitment to dynamic alignments on rights and standards, when we know many on her front bench see Brexit as an opportunity to rip up those vital protections. In recent weeks, Mr. Speaker, I've been speaking to businesses, industry organisations and trade unions. Last week, along with our shadow Brexit Secretary, my right honourable friend, the member for Holborn and St Pancras, my friend, the member for Leeds East, and Baroness Chakrabarti, I travelled to Europe to meet with EU officials and leaders to discuss the crisis and explain Labour's proposals. We left with no doubt whatsoever that our proposals are workable and could be negotiated. So tomorrow, Mr. Speaker, we will...
Order. I indicated to the House that the Prime Minister should be fairly and courteously heard. The same goes for the Leader of the Opposition. So if the usual suspects could just calm down, it would be in their interests and, more importantly, those of the House. Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker, so tomorrow we will ask Parliament to vote on these proposals. They're workable and negotiable, that back the demands of working people all across this country and industry all across this country. So I urge members across this House to back that amendment, to respect the results of the 2016 referendum, to safeguard jobs, investment and industry in this country. Labour accepts the result of the referendum, but we believe... But, Mr. Speaker, we believe in getting the terms of our exit right. That's why we believe in our alternative plan. The Prime Minister's botched deal provides no certainty or guarantees for the future and was comprehensively rejected by this House. We cannot risk our country's industry and people's livelihoods. And so, if it somehow does pass in some form at a later stage, we believe there must be a confirmatory public vote to see if people feel that's what they voted for. A no-deal outcome would be disastrous, and that's why we committed to backing the amendment in the names of my right honourable friend, the member for Normanton, Pontefract and Castleford, and the right honourable member for West Dorset, to rule out that reckless cliff-edge Brexit. The Prime Minister appears to be belatedly listening to the House. Any extension is only necessary because of the Prime Minister's shambolic negotiations and her decision to run down the clock. But until the Prime Minister is clear what alternative she would put forward in the circumstances, then she is simply continuing to run down the clock. She promises a short extension, but for what? If the government wants a genuine renegotiation, it should do so on the terms that can win a majority in this House, on terms backed by businesses and unions that are contained within Labour's amendment, which I urge the whole House to back tomorrow.
Prime Minister!
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, on a couple of the questions that the Right Honourable Gentleman asked. He asked about the meaningful vote and whether there would be new documents brought before the House. Of course, we are in discussion with the EU about the changes that this House said they wanted to see in relation to the backstop for Northern Ireland. It is those that we're discussing with the European Union, and of course any changes that are agreed with the European Union would be put before this House before the meaningful vote. He raised the issue of citizens' rights. As I covered in my statement, it is not possible that the EU does not have legal authority to do a separate deal itself on citizens' rights without a new mandate. This is a matter, unless it is part of the withdrawal agreement, and obviously we've negotiated something within the withdrawal agreement, good rights for citizens within the withdrawal agreement. If it's not within that withdrawal agreement, then it is a matter for individual member states, and we have taken that issue up with individual member states. A number of them have already given good guarantees to UK citizens. We're encouraging those who haven't to do so. He referred to the issue of workers' rights. I have to say to the Right Honourable Gentleman, I think it's important, not that he says he wants dynamic... well, I'm answering the points that he's made. He doesn't seem to be too interested in the answers I'm giving. He asked about... he advocated dynamic alignment on workers' rights. I have to say, we think on this side of the House that those decisions should be taken in the UK and should be taken in this House. And one of the reasons for taking those decisions on workers' rights in this House is because governments, as I said, of different colours in this country have consistently given greater rights to workers than the European Union has negotiated. He referenced the issue of the Labour Party's approach to a deal. And of course, the Labour Party's approach to a deal is that they do want a customs union and to be in the single market with a say on trade deals, in that sort of, well, please, if you're very nice to us, can we sit around the table and maybe sometime we might be able to put an opinion from us on the trade deals. If he wants the benefits of a customs union, no tariffs, no fees, no charges, those are there within the political declaration in the deal that has been negotiated by this government. But what we also have in that political declaration is the right for us as an independent country to strike our own trade deals again and not to be relying on the trade deals struck by those in Brussels. And then he talks about the issue of the time that is running down to the 29th of March. My sole focus throughout all of this has been on getting a deal that enables us to leave the European Union on the 29th of March with a deal. It is the Right Honourable Gentleman who has kept no deal on the table by refusing to agree to a deal. He talks about uncertainty on jobs. He could have voted to end uncertainty on jobs by backing the deal the government brought back from the European Union. And finally, he says that he and the Labour Party accept the result of the referendum. And yet we also know that they back a second referendum. And by backing a second referendum, he's breaking his promise to respect the result of the 2016 referendum. He'll be ignoring the biggest vote in our history, and he'll be betraying the trust of the British people.
If you enjoyed this video and want more analysis of Brexit and other news topics, subscribe to our channel. Also, be sure to follow us across all of our social channels by searching for TLDR News.